I think the good entrepreneurs just don't quit, just keep going until you make it happen. And we've had our ups and downs. The ups have been very up high, the downs have been very low. But at the end of the day, just keep going because we are focused on building great things. And especially with this new product that we have in the market, we see a huge opportunity. We just need to keep going.
Well, very excited for the podcast today. We have Fernando Duque on. Welcome, Fernando.
Hey, Brad, how's it going, man? It's all good.
Good to see you. Yeah, with Duke Renders, and we go back quite a bit. I know you did a lot with Luanne back in the day. So many of us connected. I think Jude Charles, who did the documentary, he and I connected, and you and I spent a bunch of time in Orlando too at Luanne Live. She's a connector.
Oh yeah, go way back, man. We have many times been different conferences together. Mm-hmm. It's always a good time to see you, man.
Well, and I think what I love about you, Fernando, I've gotten to know you pretty well over the last few years. I've seen your business evolve. I think, one thing is, as business owners, it's really hard to evolve. Change is tough. And when I look at you, I think you're one of the unique ones that have done a great job of doing that, because from where you started to what you're doing now, even on your ideal client, a lot of times on the podcast, we speak about advertising to ideal client, and that client has changed for you since I met you.
Quite a bit. Oh yeah. We started about 6 years ago, with Duke Renders, and this is for the people that don't know, it's a 3D visualization studio that produces like high-end photorealistic renderings. Actually, we did some for your house and some of your projects. We share some of the most demanding clients in the interior design world. That was our first clients, right? Like we're interior designers. And when we say high end, we mean like 100% accurate, that you can even tell a difference when it's a real picture or a rendering. Oh yeah.
Well, and we'll kind of come into how your business has evolved now. But I think going back, what's interesting is I had you take an existing photo of a project we finished. You created a rendering, and I remember doing a poll on social media, and people couldn't tell which one was real and which one was the rendering. Like, that's how accurate it was.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why we wanted to focus so much on the accuracy, because as you know, in Studio McGee, which is I think it's a common client of us, there's no room for mistakes, right? Like they're big projects, they're a big firm, and everything needs to be exactly how they look like in their heads, in their rendering, so they transform into the real experience and please their clients without any surprises. Nobody likes surprises when they're spending hundreds of thousands, even millions of dollars, right?
When did you realize renderings could be a business? I mean, what got you into that space early on?
So that's a good question, man. Like my wife, which is an interior designer herself, back in the day in COVID, we were like, wow, she needed some help with the interior design, with the rendering side of her business, and that's how we started, man. Like we decided to help her out with me and my brother. I'm talking about my brother and I. We decided to help her out with her renderings, and we finished all her projects, and then we were kind of like posting it online, and people really liked our work. And one thing led to another. Then we ended up with connecting with Luanne, and Luanne was really, really a good partner that helped us grow a lot. But yeah, it was back in the day, helping my wife, which is a fantastic designer, and she needed some help with the renderings, and that's how it took off.
How did you, when you think about the business aspect, again, I know your company's evolved, but at the beginning, how did you figure out pricing as you're working with clients, to figure out that balance of, your investment in technology, the time behind the scenes, the coordination? I know, for example, when you're creating something from an existing picture, that's one thing. But I know when I had worked with you, you're trying to take something that's two-dimensional, black and white, and you're getting very precise. Hey, Brad, what is, the copper sample? What's the roof tile going to be? All these different elements. That takes a lot of time, a lot of coordination, a lot of research. How did your company evolve just to understand and make sure you're in a profitable business to diagnose, all these different elements that go in, so you're presenting something that's realistic, and especially if they're using it as designers. And where I'm going with this is I've seen where it's hard for clients to understand the visual side of things. So that's why people do renderings, right? Because now but then if the real install is different than the rendering, the client's like, hey, that's not what I saw. Like, this doesn't match reality. And then it becomes, a difficult challenge for the builder or the designer.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Believe me. Like, and we've been there many times, man. Like, tell you, like, we learn, we learn by experience for sure, and that definitely was some challenges in the beginning because sometimes it was not accurate enough, and we hyper focus on accuracy and demanding our team the same way that our clients demanded us into getting to the absolutely perfect rendering, and it was a trial and error, a lot of trial and error, like every entrepreneur, like you just learn by mistake and by experience. And at one point, kind of like figure it out, like the process of what to request, when to request it, like unto the point that we need actually every single piece of material, furniture, where do they source it, so we can do the best job that we can, creating and recreating whatever the designer has in their heads for their client. Because it's true, there's like I said before, like there's nothing more sour than a surprise when you spend hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we take that very seriously, right? We know that our clients rely on us for their reputation, and that's a pretty serious place to be. We take it very, very seriously. So yeah, so evolving from trying to do renderings in the most accurate way to it has to be 100% accurate, and that was kind of like our motto when we started, and still is. Yeah.
So Fernando, as your business evolves, right? Your pricing, how did you go back and analyze the amount of time you're putting forth? Accuracy is one thing, but as a business, you have to really audit. And where I'm going, when I started my career, part of it's value, right? You understand the value you bring, the expertise, the experience, so not that your fee changes, but you understand how to present that, in a more professional manner. But at the same time, you understand what's going to cost you to run your business. So as you're taking off, you're doing it for your wife, you're starting to get exposure to all these designers. How did that pricing module change over time to make sure you're in a position that you're not only giving good value to the designer, but you're also profitable on your side?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, because at the beginning it was a complete chaos, because we thought that we needed to charge either by hour or by the type of project, and it was confusing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that one of the things that we learned along the way is that simplicity, when people, especially with our clients are interior designers, they're juggling with 1,000 things at the same time. Giving them another thing to juggle was probably not the right move. And one of the things that we decided is, like, let's just simplify this price to the max. And some projects are less complex than others. Some projects are more complex than others. But we decided that kind of like have a fixed price for the spaces are basically the same in size. Like a living room. Yeah, some living rooms are bigger, some living rooms are smaller, some kitchens are bigger, some kitchens are smaller. But at the same time, it kind of like balances off. And we ended up with the most simplistic pricing possible, which is just a flat fee for spaces. If the spaces are like complex, like for example, living and dining, then it would be a little bit different, but it's basically two prices for interiors, kind of like normal size spaces. And if you have like combined spaces, it would be a bit more. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And we realized that our clients were looking for multiple spaces. If
Mm-hmm.
you're doing an entire house renovation, then they wanted like a package for that those projects. So we built in a package pricing for, depending on the requirements. If it's 5 spaces, if it's 10 spaces, if it's 15 spaces, and then we package all in just one flat fee, and it gives you all the spaces that you need to render with this type of level of quality and accuracy.
What was storytelling ever part of your brand or your sales pitch to designers?
Oh yeah, like we are part of their storytelling. Like, one of the things that we don't participate that much in the creative side of
Mm-hmm.
things. We recreate what they are, have in their heads, and it's usually because you don't want to have two creators in the same part, right? Like, it gets a little bit like tricky, especially because some designers are, modern houses, Some are like very minimalist. So it depends on more what they want, and we follow the instructions as accurate as they want it. And it really kind of like it saves us a lot of time, because at the end of the day, it's their vision, and we're just a tool for them to execute their vision and present it in a much elevated way.
Were some, I mean, you mentioned the creative side. As you worked with different firms, were some easier to work with than others for you?
Yeah, I won't say which ones are the hardest ones to say, but for sure, like again, like, and I understand it. Like interior designers are. It's a type of job that you need to be very picky,
Mhm.
because usually their clients are very picky with them. So I understand, like, and we don't take it seriously at all. And believe me, after what is it, 6 7 years doing this, we've seen it all. We've had massive clients. We have clients that are just starting their careers, and we cater to all of them, and it's okay. Like we understand that it's a very demanding, challenging, like I mentioned before, juggling 1,000 things at the same time. So we understand. So we have no issue. We don't take it personally.
How did it change when you met Luanne? How did that introduction happen? How did that, change the scale of your business?
Oh, that's a funny story. So right at the very beginning of our company, it was like probably 3 months old. Again, this is deep in COVID. I decided to say, like, which are the biggest interior design podcasts in the world? And I just did the Google search. That time there was no ChatGPT or any of that. So I would just look for her, and I found her, like Luanne Break. Like, this is the top podcast of interior designers. And I went ahead and called her. Like I contacted her like through her form,
Yeah.
and I said like, "Hey, Luanne," like she didn't answer at the beginning. It was like, I think it was a form, and then it was a call booked on my calendar, and I thought it was someone from her team. But she's so hands on into her own business, so humble, and I think that's the reason that we all love her. And when I jumped on the call, it was her, and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I felt like I was talking to like some sort of a celebrity, right? Like, "Oh, hi." I was super nervous at the beginning. It's like, "Oh, okay." I didn't know you were going to take the call. And she was like nice enough, and she told me like, it's probably too early for you to advertise here, and probably how she's a straight shooter. She
Hmm.
said like, and you probably can't afford me right now, but I like you, and I'm happy to interview a designer that has used your services, and we can casually mention it there, conversationally, right? And I said, well, the best designer that I know is my wife. And she said like, well, okay, all right. Like she kind of like, okay, your wife, okay, fine. And my wife has a nice story because she's Moroccan. She's living we were living in Tulum at the moment,
Hmm.
so she had a good story to tell. And Luan really jumped on that, and she did that interview. And yeah, she mentioned it, and we got a bump on our sales. And when we were able to afford it, I came back and I said like, hello, Luan, we can afford you now. Let's begin this relationship. And honestly, it was like I met her, like I've known her for all my life, and we're such good friends today, and the relationships just keep getting better and better. And honestly, like thanks to her, and of course our team, but thanks to her on the front side, it's the reason that we grew so much so fast, because she took us under her wing from very early on our company. I think probably when we signed the first deal with her was probably like a year in, and after that it's been ongoing, and we developed to a beautiful friendship, and we're super grateful for everything that she's done for us.
What I love about that story, Fernando, and actually I didn't know that until you just told me, but you mentioned that you reached out, to Luanne, and she said, "I think that you're probably too early, in doing some sponsoring of the podcast." And the reality is, I think from Luanne's perspective, I think it would have been easy for her to be like, "Oh, I have Fernando. He's a great, very ambitious. He wants to sponsor." I mean, a lot of us, it's easy to take that opportunity and not say no when it benefits her, right? And who knows for you
Yeah,
in the future. And where I'm going is, when a few years ago, I had a client that was looking at doing this monstrous remodel in a part of town that would not bring back value. And as hard as it was for me, I went to him and I said, "Look, I'm like, I know you want to spend all this money and want to do this remodel. I don't think this is a good investment or ROI, because in a few years from now, you're going to be way beyond any comp in the neighborhood. You're going to overspend. And the client ended up not doing the remodel. And they ended up looking at a property a couple years later, and they had a like financial analysis, a financial planner that they worked with. And they were consulting with the financial planner, and the financial planner's like, why don't you call Brad? Why don't you call AFT? I mean, he gave you good counsel before, and they were looking at doing a new project. Unfortunately, we ended up doing a project for him years down the road that ended up becoming a huge win-win for both of us. But at the time, it was really hard for me to say no. But I had this uneasy feeling like I just don't feel like this is good for my client, and I it takes a long time to get to that point, but a lot of our
Yeah.
businesses are built on reputation. And when you do have the client's best interests at heart, and look at you, I mean, she had your best interests at heart, even if it meant a pause for her and where she was at her in her career, but it allowed you to be a client for life, where now you have this this huge push from your side.
And it's true. I think that it requires some sort of like maturity to say no to a client because you want their best interest. But at the same time, I think it's just some investment, right? Because you gain his trust, and I think that that's important, and I think you mentioned it, like gaining the trust of somebody that and by refusing the business initially, that yeah, I'm pretty sure that you could have made some money on that side. Then it came to probably a much better relationship.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that referred to some other clients, and it built in that way. I think, and I'm super grateful for Luan by setting me straight at the very beginning. It's like, no, kid, not yet, not yet. But let me know when you are ready, and that's exactly what I did. Like I said, like it made me think that I need to get my business together in order to afford her, start a relationship with her when we were actually ready. And she was so knowledgeable about maybe you're not even ready for what's going to come if I take you right now as a client, regardless. And let's say that that I was able to afford her. What happens when a 35 designer comes at the same time? Are
Mm-hmm.
you going to be able to take them?
Yeah.
Because at the end of it, her reputation is on the line. Oh, I heard you from Luan,
Yeah.
but it didn't work out because you guys were too full. And maybe she was wise enough to see like these companies not they probably don't have their business together enough in order to serve what would come if I start referring clients to them. So super grateful, and I think that I'm glad that we have kind of like a similar story together because yeah, like it takes some courage and some maturity. I think go back to maturity on saying no yet.
Yeah, and I love that you bring up those points because, yeah, there's an element of I'm sure her seeing, hey, Fernando needs a little bit of time so he can handle the bandwidth, so he has the bandwidth, right? As I'm referring people
Oh
over,
yeah.
and what's unique about you, Fernando, I know you and I have had conversations over the past, and here you are working in the design world, and now your company's changed, right? You're working with developers now. You're working on, a whole different element. What pushed you to change that sales pitch, to change your clientele from maybe the designer, architect, or builder relationship to now, pursue the developer?
Well, I tell you, like when you're producing so many visuals for not only interior designers, like some developer comes into the mix, and yeah, like you start seeing some patterns with them. In fact, at one point, we ended up going to Dubai. A friend of ours invited us to Dubai and said, like, hey, like you're doing amazing renderings. Uh, Dubai is a place that is completely under construction, and that's basically like almost every week there's a new project launch, and not or like one small building. Like these are like billions of dollars in investments in multiple properties, like thousands of apartments, and mega development. And I tell you, like that's when we started like seeing an opportunity. So we're serving interior designers in the US. We had this opportunity on going to Dubai for new opportunities, and now serving real estate developers. and it put us in a very very unique situation because we started to see like the how they are presenting their projects, like uh, you're sitting inside their sales process, and at the most critical moment, you see how they prepare the lunches, you see how they brief their brokers, you see how they communicate with their buyers. And what we kept seeing over and over again was the same pattern, like world class properties being sold through completely broken processes.
Hmm.
And the sales teams doing like crazy things. And again, we like I was in these meetings because we were part of their team, like outsourced, but part of them, because we needed to understand everything that goes around the projects, what they're going to what they're going to sell, what they're going to, the message that they want to transfer to the end buyer. So it puts them in a very very unique position, um, understanding these developers and how they think. So yeah.
So, as you get into the develop, so you moved to Dubai, correct, Fernando?
Yeah, so right, so I go back and forth. So our company is now based in Dubai. At least the yeah. Well, for the people that don't know, it's funny that I always say this, and I always tell you, Brad, like, remember the time that we talked. And for everyone who doesn't know, Brad and I have some offline conversation that honestly has completely transformed my life. And one of them was this one. Remember when we talked, and I told you about the opportunity that we had in Dubai, and we were like, so what do we do? Like, should we just focus on the interior design? Should we just focus on Dubai? Should we try to manage both and probably automate a little bit the interior design business? And you're like, bro, go to Dubai, move to Dubai. In fact, just move to Dubai. And that was powerful, man. I tell you every single time we meet that your words were very very let's say good, for the lack of word. Like, there's very powerful when for you it was so clear that if the business opportunity was gigantic in Dubai, just go and take it. So that's what we did. And now my business partner, my brother, lives in Dubai. He moved there with his wife. We have a team over there, and it serves that segment of our business, right? Like the interior design business still going in the US, but we have a completely new, different branch now in Dubai, and we came up with actually a very cool products, and we are now integrating renderings with sales technology, and that's kind of like what we're doing right now.
No, kudos to you, Fernando. And honestly, it's funny because you traded I shouldn't say traded. I mean the margarita beach life of Tulum to Dubai. I mean, it's a big difference there. Um,
It's a big difference, yeah.
yeah, but as you were, just in fairness for the audience that probably wasn't privy to those conversations. You had a great business model, right? You had a lot of success. You're working with designers and architects, and one of the challenges that you and I have is, it's awesome. You do tremendous work. You have a happy customer, but it's one at a time, right? It's like, okay, well, I have this,
One of the time.
yeah, and now you got to pound the pavement and find another one. Whereas the developer side's a little bit different because, where I've seen development change, especially in the last, 20 years, and I'm seeing this in Phoenix and all over, is this concept of, lock and leave, and having everything there, where you're seeing these retail and residential spaces combined, right? So they're selling these um, high-end locations all around where you live, and you go downstairs and there's a coffee shop, and there's a hair
Yeah.
salon and a spa and restaurants, and so but to sell those at a premium price, like, especially in the development stage, like, developers, they need to have something to sell. And until the building's built and they can tour people through the model home, and they need realistic renderings. And I remember seeing some of the content you were producing. I'm like, Fernando, this is what these developers are looking for. They're looking for someone of your
Yeah.
talent that can sell a unit or a condo or a townhome, at the initial stages, right? At the grand opening, when you're breaking ground, putting a shovel in, and nothing's constructed for maybe 2 years down the road. How hard was it for you to break into that model, into that, to start meeting developers and start building that element of your business?
I mean, it wasn't easy. I tell you, it wasn't easy. When we went to Dubai the first time, we actually participated in like kind of like a conference,
Mhm.
and we ended up putting a booth with our renderings and what we were doing, and it started to kind of like people started were interested, and by now like we're not the only rendering company in
Right.
Dubai. There are so many, right? So it is a very competitive market. I feel like Dubai is kind of like that song that you make it in New York, you make it anywhere. But I think if you make it in Dubai, you can make it anywhere. It's just as competitive. It's so much competition, but also there's so much opportunity because again, like one project being launched almost daily, and so the sun comes out for everyone over there, and it was just, but it was hard. The competition was getting tough. The prices were dropping, and it was kind of like a race to the bottom. So we had to evolve. Oh yeah, so we had to evolve. We decided that yeah, we still do the renderings and we serve our clients with the highest quality renderings, but we had to find a new edge that differentiated us from the typical rendering company that now they're probably in the hundreds competing for the same clients. And that's when we identified that we could add a lot of value in the sales process. Like you
Mhm.
mentioned, like how can we add value? You add value to a developer by selling their properties
Yeah.
faster. Like
Right.
there's no other value for them. Like you can give them leads, you can give them nice pictures, but you can help them sell faster. That's when they're gonna love you the most. So that took us to the what I call the evolution of the renders, which is now what we call Parallax, and it's a sales platform, and I can tell you all about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a Parallax. It's a AI powered real estate sales intelligence platform, and it's built specifically to the way off plan is property sold, like you just mentioned. What they want is to sell their properties, and if they can sell their property before the first movement of the land is done, the better, right? And the simplest way to describe it is like one place where developers upload their projects, brokers present them, and the buyers experience them. And it's all connected, it's all tracked, and it's like all, let's say, intelligent. And the reason that we call them like an operating system is because it doesn't just serve one person in the transaction. It serves all three major players simultaneously. Like, for example, the developer who's invested heavily on visuals, branding, marketing, they get control of the consistency of how they sell their properties, which is very important for them. The second player is the broker who's actually selling the property every day. And they get like a structure and professional tool that makes them look sharp. And the product is, it's as high as the product that they're representing. And of course, excuse me, the buyer, that it's going to get like a clean guided experience instead of like a bunch of WhatsApp messages and like emails, and like it is overwhelming. And the interesting side of Parallax is that it's like when the presentation ends for the buyer, instead of the broker sending like 10 follow-up messages across different channels, PDFs, they share just one single link to the prospect, just one link, and that link contains that kind of like a curated summary of what the prospect is interested, and it's been kind of like accumulating all the intelligence behind it. Like, for example, just give you an example. If you go to a development and you're interested in some property, and at the end you leave and you want to share this with your wife after, hey honey, like this is what I saw. Every single movement that you do on that platform, it gets kind of like tracked. So the sales rep knows when to follow up, how to follow up. So it's not blind on like, hey, did you see what do you think about the properties? No, no, no. I know that you saw property 303. I can tell them
Mhm.
that way. But like, hey, I can give you some sort of a flexibility on the payment on this property, or I can, or for example, if you haven't opened it, like, hey, following up in a more intelligent way, so it gives them more like more of a informed decision making when it comes to following up and closing deals much faster.
See, and that's amazing. I mean, because as I'm thinking about, Parallax that you created, one thing that's tough is a lot of these big developers, right? These are major deals. There's a lot of money they're investing. There's a lot of capital they're bringing in to make these things happen. A lot of coordination with the municipalities and governments and stuff. For just to get the development approved and tax breaks and so forth. As they're doing this, a lot of them are working with big marketing firms, right? I mean, these are big international marketing firms that have a lot of reach. And so for you to come into, world-class environment in Dubai and out of Tulum and to make an impact, to me, it just shows that work ethic, Fernando, because one thing's work ethic and the power of connection, but I mean, you're pushing against some big firms, being a smaller company and utilizing AI. And so when did you get your first break, moving into that market?
It's a good question. I remember that on that trip, the first trip that we did, the first time that we had so much of a traction there, like it was a lot of buzz. We were presenting a VR product that we had at the moment, and yeah, I remember this exactly because there's this gentleman that comes in and he says, like, very very modest, like he wasn't showy or flashy or anything, and he said, "Come to my office. I wanna talk to you." When we got to his office, it was on the Palm Jumeirah, which is that big palm in Dubai that's man made,
Mm-hmm.
very famous, and he was part of that team. And I was like, just let me pretend that this is like not unreal, and and like, let me just pretend that I do this every day. And I was trying to keep my cool, but yeah, we got them as clients initially. Like we were like, okay, so this is real. Like we're now going to do renderings and VR for this massive, like out of this world developer, one of the biggest in the world. And that gave me a lot of confidence. That gave me a lot of confidence because I said, well, we have something that people really like. We are into, we're getting into these deep waters and I'm feeling comfortable doing it. We were able to deliver the projects and they were happy. And of course, after that, they started referring us. And, like once you work with the biggest ones, people want to kind of like
Mm-hmm.
get a piece of that too. And that was, going back to your question, that was a big break. It took a while to close that client because it's so massively and it's semi-government, and it took a lot of time. But I don't quit. I don't quit, and I follow up until they buy or die, like Sirhan say, and I did. So me and my team, we did I think a very coordinated job because I was flying back and forth from Dubai to Tulum, but my team was definitely there, and we just made it happen. And but it took a while. Like this, that was one of the things I noticed. Like it took a while to close a client like that. In the interior design world, is like you basically talk to one person and that's okay, and that's just the nature of the business. Here you need to go through procurement processes and
Mm-hmm.
permits and all this, and the sales process, sales cycle was probably like in the interior design business, like I don't know, what, a week or so, 2 weeks. In Dubai with these massive developers, like it could be up to 6 months. It took us around like 8 months. And if you're used to closing in 1 week, 8 months sounds like it's an eternity, and it was. But at the end, we did it, and it was fantastic. After probably, I don't know, 25 meetings, but it was good. It was good. Yeah.
So, was there ever a time that you were nervous, right? I mean, there's time, as you mentioned, and there's a lot of pre-construction, there's planning, there's proposals, you're trying to put together a big package for them. Was there ever a moment where you're like, did I make the right decision?
It happens all the time. I still think about it all the time, especially with the situation right now that is happening. We don't need to get political,
Yeah.
but yeah, like
Yeah. Next door to you,
right now.
next door to you, there's a lot going on. Yeah.
Well, not only next door to us, like as we recording this, what is it, March 16th? Some just you're in the middle, right? Like geographically, for the people that
Hmm.
probably don't know that much of that area, like it's right in the
Yeah.
middle of the conflict, right? So it's right now I'm thinking that, like, right now I'm like, did I make the right decision? Because it's part of the challenge of being an entrepreneur. I think that, like, it's not always great, and actually I would say that with an entrepreneur, probably most of the time it's not great. And this is probably one of those times. But honestly, like, it does come to me. That's the nature of entrepreneurship, and I think the good entrepreneurs just don't quit. And if you don't quit, you just keep going until you make it happen. And we've had our ups and downs. The ups have been very up high, the downs have been very low. But at the end of the day, just keep going, because we are focused on building, great things. And especially with this new product that we have in the market, we see a huge opportunity. We just need to keep going.
Do you love being an entrepreneur?
You asking me on the right? I'm probably not a good time. I love it. I do. I do love it. But I think there's a quote by Elon Musk that says, like, being an entrepreneur is like chewing glass, staring at the abyss. And because you never know what's going to happen, like, and I really love that expression, chewing glass and staring at the abyss, because it is challenging, man. Like, I don't think it's built for. I don't think everyone is built to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I feel like not a lot of people are built to be an entrepreneur, because if you can't stomach the hard things, then you're gonna suffer a lot. Like, I feel like that entrepreneur is a person that really has a high tolerance for risk, and also has a high probably control over stress. And I think that's where I am right now. But it does give me the flexibility of being more time with my family. Our girls are homeschooled, so I get to spend a lot of time with them, because being an entrepreneur, like, I decide sometimes when I work. Sometimes I work like probably 16 hours a day,
Hmm.
but sometimes I can probably take the day off, like, and just be with them, and it's good. How about you? You like being an entrepreneur,
It's funny because I think it changes by the minute as well. Like you said, Fernando, I
right?
think the chewing glass analogy is kind of funny, made me laugh. I think entrepreneurship's really hard. I think, until you've been in that role of the stress of running a company. When I was an employee, there were many times I was stressed. Right, it's construction. There were things that stressed me out about, clients, projects, deadlines, subcontractors. A lot of things I was managing. But it does change when you're the owner, because there's a lot of things you're looking at even outside of that immediate project, right? And when you start thinking about business development and cash flow and systems, and are the people happy, healthy, the people healthy yourself. You mentioned your family. That, yeah, there might be a time where you can take off and spend the day with your kids, but at the same time you're fielding a lot of questions and concerns. And so, I think there's a lot of benefits from being an entrepreneur, but there's also, a lot of drawback as well. And to your point, I think it's, I always enjoy speaking to entrepreneurs, because, in some ways, it's not that we commiserate, but there's little tidbits that they share that, you're not alone, even though sometimes it feels you are.
That's a problem. Like, I think that, especially if you're doing this as a solo, like, you're the only owner of the company. You don't have like business partner, which is a lot of people do that. It's a very lonely game. Like, it's a very, very lonely game. It depends, right? Like, if some people like working with some other people, some people don't. But regardless, like, there's not a lot of people that understand this the way we do, entrepreneurs. Like, people. I always say that there's two types of people, like the two types of entrepreneur, like entrepreneurs that are entrepreneurs, and entrepreneurs that think that they have like an entrepreneurial spirit.
Hmm.
And those are the people that, like, they always want to start a business, but they never do. And they always have great ideas until they find that somebody else did them, because they never launched them, because it takes risk, and risk is not a natural thing. it's risk is people avoid risk, and entrepreneurs we actually go towards risk. And it's just funny, right? The way it goes. Like you mentioned at the right at the beginning, there's a post that says like the day of a life of an entrepreneur, and it's like a graph. And it's like, have you seen that one?
Yeah.
Like it's a graph. Like in one day, like, oh my god, I'm the best. An hour later, like, oh god, why did I do this? 2 hours later, like, oh yeah, I did it, I made it. 2 hours later, like, I suck.
Yeah.
And it's just like one day, like especially in the early days, right? Like you never know what's going on, and you go into this loop of what is it like, uh, unknown optimism. And then I think there's a loop that is kind of like goes like that: unknown optimism, then known pessimism.
Hmm.
So it is definitely a challenge, but I honestly think that because of the way we are built entrepreneurs, I think that leaving corporate and getting into entrepreneurial in the entrepreneurial world, it is something that it's doable. I don't think it's that doable the other way around. Like I don't think anyone can hire me if I decide to go back to to get a job. I think I'm completely unhireable, because if I go back to if I go, I've never had a corporate job, but if I ever do, like I would go and propose crazy risks that make no sense, because that's what I do right now. Like who is going to change their life in Tulum, living in the jungle, like you say, like margaritas, to just like, yeah, let's go to the other side of the world and start a business over
Right.
there when we don't know
Right.
anyone. Like, I mean, honestly, like you would be fired just by suggesting that. Like, are you crazy? Like, why would we do that? So yeah, those are the risks that we have to take as this breed of people.
What do you love about Dubai?
And I love Dubai, man. I really like Dubai because for everyone that doesn't know about Dubai, have you been to
I've
Dubai?
never been. I want to go someday. So yeah, tell us about it for
Oh,
those that haven't been.
oh man, like Dubai. This is the way I describe Dubai. Dubai is like everything that you see in the TVs, but 10 times more impressive. And it's not about the flashiness. The flashiness is there. Yes, the flashiness is there. For me, I'm not a flashy dude. Again, I live in Tulum, like
Mhm.
I'm like a hippie in Tulum. The flashiness is not what attracts me. What attracts me is the progress. Everything works like a Swiss watch in Dubai.
Mhm.
Like the way that they think, the way that that country is so young. It is like what is like 25 years in the making, and you go there and you see these massive developments, and everything just works. I remember I call it the city of the future because it truly is. Like I think they're gonna come now by like flying cars next year, and they're testing them, and again, like it goes back for me, like it works, like in how they manage to see how visionary the government is over there. And like for example, like I think when there was nothing built over there, they built a highway that has like 9 lanes each on each side
Mhm.
with no buildings around it, because they know they had a vision for growth that it was completely, like I think it's pretty much like combine both questions. Like what I like about Dubai is that they have an entrepreneurial way of building a city,
Mhm.
and they just push the envelopes. They build things that are never built before. It's always funny that all our briefs for projects are like, we're building the insert biggest whatever they want to build, or the largest, or the most impressive of the world. And they truly do, like they build things that are something that I've never seen in my life. And the culture, honestly, the culture is fantastic. I happen to go there again very often, and I'm always pleased about the people over there. It's also very international. So I think 8% of the people that live there are locals. 92% are just from all over the world. And when I mean all over the world, like you can find people from Asia, from South America, from the US, like just from everywhere, like Africa, a bunch of people from India, Pakistan, it's just everywhere. And I don't know, it seems like they figure it out. And one thing that I love the most is how safe it is.
Mhm.
There's like you can there's some reels that I've seen that they show off like people leave like Rolexes and gold bars on top of a car in a very high traffic area walking. They leave it there, they start recording, nobody touches it. Nobody even sees, like you see that, but you don't touch it, like it's a very, very safe place. So for everyone that hasn't been to Dubai, including yourself, yeah, I suggest take a nice flight over there, and hopefully you like it.
I need to get out there and visit you, Fernando. So, do you feel that there was a difference in culture? Like, what was the culture like change for you? And additionally, running a business there. How did it? Even though it's pro business, pro entrepreneur, was there, time to get up to speed to figure out how to do business there?
Well, I mean, like everything, right? Like when you're used to doing things in some way, and then you go to another completely different culture, different processes. It's just always adaptation. I think that's the word, of doing business. However, it was a good one. Like I was used to probably like, okay, if you're gonna start a business, you need some permits, you need this and that. And when I found there, it was like, all right, you want to start a company? 3 days later, you have it. Like you want to have power of attorneys. You get a video call over Zoom, you put your passport there, and then you just give power of attorney to anyone. Like it doesn't matter. Like it's just the simplicity of doing business over there was highly surprising in a good way. Like it was very, very, because they know that they build that country based on outside investment. And they were at some point an oil state. Well, the UAE, right?
Yeah.
Dubai's a emirate of the UAE. The UAE was an oil state, and not anymore. Now it's a hub for entrepreneurs. They're huge on crypto. It's like a crypto hub. They do gigantic conferences, and I think that part of the world, it is growing so much because of the investments of the sovereign funds. Like you have the Saudis next door, you have Qatar, you have all the Kuwait, Oman, and all these countries are like crazy rich. But what I like about them is that they're crazy rich and they invest heavily in infrastructure, in making people feel comfortable living there, in welcoming people from all over the world, and make them feel like home through good processes, good laws, good again flexibility in doing business. So I think it's just like it was a very surprising, different though, but in a very surprising. And culturally, I think that's part of their culture too. Like they say, like make money, habibi, and that's pretty much what they want to do.
Do you feel it's cost of living expense? What is it? What do you spend to live there?
So it's expensive. Yeah, like every nice city that is attracting people from all over the world is expensive. So Dubai, you can go to Dubai on a budget. Like I figure that it may cost probably like I don't want to say like a San Francisco because that's probably too much, but maybe between a rural town in in the U.S. and San Francisco, probably that in the middle, like compared to the lifestyle that we have in Mexico, it was like double.
Yeah.
Double. Yeah. But in San Francisco, you will spend 10 times,
Yep.
right? So, but you don't pay taxes. That's another thing. You don't pay taxes. So you don't pay income tax. You pay some corporate taxes, just very minimal, but you don't pay income tax. So that's a very big benefit, and that's why probably they're attracting so many people and so many expats.
That's amazing. I mean, it's just incredible. I mean, one day I'll get there. I've met with a lot of people that have been to Dubai, and it's just, especially for us at, construction, design, architecture. I mean, it's kind of our wonderland, our Disneyland.
It's a wonderland. I honestly think that the creativity of that place is unmatched. Like especially, and I think it goes around all the area, the Middle East and North Africa area. Like it is a world to explore, especially if you're in the construction development world. You can just like go there, get ideas, and import them back to your country. Find ways, because they're pushing so much the boundary that it is kind of like a playground for ideas. And that's why I recommend, especially people that are in this world, like go ahead, go there, so you can get the ideas and replicate them in your hometown, because most likely will be the first time that your hometown is going to see something like that. And yeah, like for me, it's every time I go there, it's like I'm impressed. Like, oh my god, this they built this. Like, how do they build that? They built that palm tree. I think like was probably like 20 years ago, and now they build another
It's
one
crazy.
bigger. And then they build something called the World Islands. That is what it sounds like. They build the world in little islands in the middle of the water, like, and they sell them individually. Like, oh, you want to buy England, you want to buy Croatia, you want to buy Venezuela, where I'm from, and then you can do that.
It's amazing. So for Parallax, going back to that the how you've implemented AI, right? How you have the visualization, you're working on sales. What's the future hold for you?
So let's see. Well, Parallax is it's this product that we have that honestly, like, um, it is getting so much traction with developers. We were planning on staying in the Middle East, but we saw that this is a global problem. Like the problem that we're trying to solve is global. Like I asked people from my network, like, how's the sales process in your area, and it seems like it's cut with the same knife. So as in for now, we do have a bunch of clients in the Middle East. We have a few clients in Latin America. Uh, we have some clients in Africa. We want to start acquiring clients in the US. I think that we have something very good to offer also for our potential US clients, because again, like if you're selling a luxury property, you want to offer a luxury experience. You want to offer an elevated way to sell this. And when your sales process is broken, then buyers don't, you start
Hmm.
like the trust issues starts coming in, like when you see, and that happens a lot in all of our clients mostly, like they tell us that, so we build these massive showrooms, we build these beautiful experiences, we pick up clients in Dubai, we pick up clients in Rolls Royces, and then when we're about to sell to them, it's just like it doesn't match. Okay, and I think that in places like for example in Miami, they're selling now these branded buildings, or like the Mercedes Towers and the Porsche Towers and all these like branded buildings. I think some also in other areas of the U.S. I believe that this platform will kind of like match what you're selling with how you sell it. Okay, so coming back to your question, like we're really now, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to talk to you about, like introducing this product to the US and all your listeners that US, Canada, and all over the world, because I think that this is a problem that is a global problem,
Hmm.
and we are in the process of solving it, and we are solving it for some of our clients, and kind of like having a good experience not only for whoever is envisioning this project, which is a developer, also a streamlined, more better way and a better way to sell this, which is the broker, but also for the buyer. Like I think the buyer at the end is the one who it kind of like trickles down into like the developer shows something that is amazing, it starts losing quality the way it sells it. And then the client, who's the buyer, who isn't the one that pays the most money, gets kind of like the worst part of it,
Hmm.
you know. And so we're trying to again to make every player in that ecosystem having a great experience, and and it's something that we are doing constantly, improving the platform, making it better, making it sleeker, making it faster, and yeah, we've gotten a lot of traction, and that's why kind of like going back to your question, like what's the future for us? We hope we can bring this technology to our potential US clients.
It's amazing. So when the technology that you're using, I would imagine this is to your point, someone that's looking at matching that client experience, with the sales pitch, with the process as they're taking them through on a big development, as opposed to maybe a one-off custom home, but typically a bigger project where you're trying to group a lot of personalities, a lot of people, and carry them through the process.
Yeah, like it works for like it works for mostly like I don't want to limit it to residential only, but we've done some commercial projects too. But like to sell like a luxury tower or a group of houses, for example, that's more common in the US. Like a neighborhood has like probably like 10 houses. The developer is just going. It just makes it much better because it has the capability of showcasing things in a more interactive way. Okay, and it always is all connected, right? Like the sales reps ended up knowing what the buyer is actually interested in, and it's just following up in a more conscious way, in a more effective way. But yeah, like that's kind of like what we're envisioning right now as for the future for our company. And I remember showing you
Hmm.
the first initial kind of like beta testing of this. What was like probably like a year ago.
Hmm.
It's evolved so much, like tech does, especially in the AI era. It evolves so much, but yeah, like it's such a visual product, right? Like it's such a visual product that we're probably in the wrong medium to describe such a visual product, right? Because it's an audio, but there's so much to see in order to understand this product in its entirety. So I invite everyone to kind of like hit me up, and we can talk about how to connect at the end. And because I really think that we're solving a very, very crucial problem that is going to end up being beneficial for everyone in the sales process. Like I mentioned it already many times, the developer, the sales rep, and whoever's ended up buying this product, their projects. Sorry.
Man, that's amazing, Fernando. It's amazing. You start from renders, right, and you go into the virtual reality, which I've been part of that. I've seen you do that. To now, creating AI software that's assisting developers, all around the world. Like your growth has been amazing. It's been incredibly part of it, and I'm glad you came on to share that with our listeners.
Thank you, man. No, and but it's been like an evolution, Like I think that the rendering side of business led us to the virtual reality side of business, and then the virtual reality side of business led us to the sales platform. It uses renderings, like it is based on renderings. Like everything that we show in the platform is based on renderings. Like we still use our core business as our supplier, and but now the renderings are being used in a more efficient way, like with cohesiveness, with a story behind it, with the message that the developer wants to transmit, not whatever the sales rep is thinking to show in whenever they think that it's the right time to show it. So this gives them cohesiveness to the entire sales process. So yeah, it's been an evolution. It's been a crazy journey. It's been almost like 8 years in the making. And who knows what's going to happen if we talk again in like 6 years again. I wonder what we're going to be doing. But it's definitely been an evolution on from the rendering side of business. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. It's incredible, Fernando. And, for those listening, how can they find you? How can they learn more about the product?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, like Parallax is a very visual platform, and honestly, it makes a lot of sense when you see it in action. So I invite everyone who wants to learn a little bit more about this to visit us in getparallax.com. Actually, we created a site just for you, Brad. It's just getparallax.com/Brad. Okay, and you can book a demo there directly with me. Like you will be talking to me directly,
Hmm.
and if you book it through there, as a thank you, we're offering 30% off of the first project. And that link is only there. So it's getparallax.com/Brad. And yeah, you can get a free demo of the project. I'll walk you through it. I'll show you all the capabilities and all the modules that benefit different areas. And you'll get a sweet 30% off of your first project, which is just not a bad deal.
It's amazing. Fernando, you're incredible. You're an inspiration, man. I appreciate you sharing, the true heartfelt pains at times of being an entrepreneur. And, it's been fun to follow your journey. I mean, you've done something that many of us only aspire to, change countries and build an incredible program. So congrats, man.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate a lot coming from you, because I also like it. The admiration is mutual, my friend. I seen you throughout the years, and it just your price get nicer and nicer. And I've seen also your growth, and yeah, the admiration is mutual, man. So it's always good talking to you. I always enjoy our conversations, and it's a fantastic. You're a fantastic person, and you're doing a great job. And I think a lot of your influence has been a big part of my life, and I really appreciate that, man.
Well, thanks, Fernando.